I've made quite a few videos about the Nest integration and Home Assistant. In fact, right after the last video, there was an issue with the deprecation of one of the authentication methods, and that kind of broke everything. So today, with changes that have been made in version 2022.7 of Home Assistant and some changes made on the integration, we're going to do what we hope is the final video on how you can integrate easily with your Nest devices and Home Assistant. So let's jump right into it. So let's start out talking about some documentation here. This is the Nest page in Home Assistant, and right off the bat, you'll notice there's an active alert for the integration. So let's take a look at what that is. The active alert talks about Nest Desktop Auth deprecation. The primary method recommended by the Nest Home Assistant integration was deprecated for new users on February 28th of this year, 2022, and will be disabled for all users on October 3rd of this year. Existing users must upgrade to Web Auth credentials by October 3rd, or it's going to stop working. This is what occurred right after my last video. When I released it, right after that is when they deprecated this. So anybody adding authentication based on my previous video didn't work. Also, if you're an existing user using App Auth, you can move over to the deprecated App Auth credentials section. We're not going to cover that in this video. We're going to go straight into creating a new integration or new credentials to be added to Home Assistant. So that's the issue here. You can read all the details if you want to and go through all the background and whatnot. What we're going to do is follow this document right here. And we're going to follow this to integrate Nest devices. And currently the supported devices are climate, sensor, and camera. Now these are the only ones supported by the integration and more importantly by the SDM API. So this is what you're going to have available to you. Cameras and doorbells use automation and device triggers for events and a media source for capturing media images on supported devices. Other devices like the smoke detectors and CO alarms or security systems are not currently supported by the SDM API, which makes them not supported by the integration. And trust me, I'm one of those people that have been waiting forever for the Nest Protect smoke detectors and CO detectors to show up as a supported device because I have those. They're just not there, and I don't know when that would happen, if ever. All right, so we're going to follow through this document, and just remember that the API requires a one-time US $5 fee. If you've already signed up for an account using the Smart Device Management API, you don't have to pay another $5. All right, we're going to follow again this configuration document, and to make it super easy, adding Nest to your Home Assistant instance can be done via the user interface by using this My button. And this My button is available in a lot of different integrations. So we're just going to click on that. It's going to open our page in Home Assistant after we have confirmed that. And this is the URL it's going to open. You can edit this location. If you have more than one Home Assistant instance running in your environment, you can change this to the one you want to install the integration on. For example, I have a production version and I have this one, which is my test or playground version. So we're going to use this to demo today. I'm going to open the link. And it's going to ask me if I want to set up Nest. And I'm going to say OK to that. And it's going to say we discovered these, want to set them up Nest. I will do that, yes. And now it has a whole bunch of information here for you to follow. You're going to create and configure a cloud project. You're going to go through the console, create a project, give your cloud project a name and click Create, save it, and do a bunch of other stuff here. We're going to take this step by step, so you don't have to worry about following this right here. But in the meantime, leave this up and running while you do the rest of the work. I will click here to go to the Cloud Console. So let me just click on the Cloud Console here. And make sure that you are using the proper account for the Cloud Console. If you have more than one Google account, you will have to make sure that you're using the right one. And I am not, so I'm going to switch over to the other one. And now I'm in the proper account. So we're going to go back over here and we're going to follow this. We did all of this stuff already. You can manually configure this by going through settings, device and services integrations, and doing it that way, which if you've ever added integrations in the past, that's typically the manual way. So our first step is to create and configure a cloud project using the Cloud Console, which is what we were just in. So we're on the Cloud Console. You're going to create a new project. So let's do that now. Create project. And I'm going to give it a name. I'm just going to call it HA Demo. And I'm just going to create that. So now that this is created, what you want to do on this project is make sure you selected the project here. And by the way, I'm not going to go spend my time editing the video and blurring out all of this information. Once I'm complete with the video, I'm going to go ahead and destroy this particular demo. So all of this information here will not function after I destroy it and before the video is published. So don't worry about that. Appreciate those that let me know when I inadvertently put a password on the screen or whatever. But in this case, we're going to get rid of this when it's done. Don't worry about that. So we're going to go over here to the sidebar and we're going to go to APIs and services. And we're going to have to enable a couple of APIs and services. You can click that right here. And you're going to search for a couple, and it tells you in the documentation here, we want to enable the Smart Device Management API and the Cloud PubSub API. So we're going to do that now. Smart Device Management API, click on it. Click on that again, and then you're going to enable it. If it's already enabled, you'll see a little check mark here that says it's enabled. That means you've already added it to this project at some point in the past. All right, so we're going to do another one, enabled APIs. We're going to look for the Cloud PubSub API, and we're going to enable that one. And now both of those are enabled. So let's go back and see what's next. So now you have a cloud project ready for the next section. So you now have created a cloud project. And while you're over here, by the way, in your cloud project, you're going to need to make sure that you have your name and your project number and your project ID. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy those now and paste them where I can get to them later. Typically that's in one of my notepads or whatever. So I'm going to paste that in there. All right, so I have that, and it talks about that here. Make sure you're copying this information. You'll need it later. All right, so we're done with this section. I'm going to go ahead and collapse it for sake of cleanliness. Now we're going to configure the Oauth consent screen, Cloud Console. And you'll go back over here to the Oauth consent screen. And if you can't find stuff over here, it's just really easier to type Oauth consent screen up here. OAUTH. And you want that right there. And you're going to create an external application. And you're going to create it here. You need to give it a name. You need to give it a support email. And typically this is going to be your Gmail account that's associated with your console here. So I'm going to give it HA demo, Nest demo app. Support email will be my email. Skip the logo. You do need to give it a developer contact information email address. Typically you can use the same one. So I'll save and continue that. You don't need to do anything with the scope, so we'll save and continue there. You do need to add a test user, so we're going to add a test user. And again, we'll use the same email address as we used everywhere else. And you'll see it show up down here. Save and continue. And now you have this OAuth consent set up. So let's check and make sure we did everything right. External, save and continue, test user, we set that up. And now we need to go back over to the OAuth consent screen and publish the app. So we'll go back over, click on the OAuth consent screen and publish the app. And it's going to ask you this question and all of this. We're just going to confirm it. And now we're in production. Make sure this says in production, not testing. And that completes this section right here. If you leave it in testing, you will get logged out every 7 days. So you don't want to do that. Now we're going to configure the OAuth application credentials under the Cloud Console. So we're going to create some credentials under the credentials section of this app we just created. So click on credentials, create credentials, and you want an OAuth client ID. Application type, this is important. You want web application. This is what changed since the last video. You can't use a desktop application. You have to use a web application. Give it a name just to be consistent. HA Nest demo. All right. And then you're going to add an authorized redirect URI. Now, if you have done this on some of my earlier videos, the authorized redirect API URL, let me say that again. The authorized redirect URI was a big issue because you had to open a port on your router. You had to create a domain. You had to point this back to the domain. And all of that had to work just exactly right, or you would end up with a situation in which it wouldn't authorize. Well, one of the things that Home Assistant did in this, they allowed the use of their own redirect to URL. So this is what you need for your redirect URI. This is the my.homeassistant.io redirect OAuth link. Again, this points back to that device that you have set up. So when it goes to my.home-assistant.io, it's going to go to that device that you have set up that points to. And that's the same one you did when you clicked on the My Integration button. If that is not correct and you don't have that set up, you're going to have to make sure that's right first. All right. This is super important. Make sure that you use this URI, because this way you don't have to do anything with SSL. You don't have to do anything with domains. You don't have to open ports. It all just works that way. So this is the URI, and I'm going to copy that here, and I'm going to paste that into the authorized URI section and just verify that it looks right. All right. All right. Again, I'm going to delete all of this stuff when we're done. So don't worry about telling me that I've left this exposed on the video. It will be gone soon before you watch the video, as a matter of fact. But you do want to copy this down. You're going to need it. So I'm going to click on copy and paste it down in my notepad that I'm keeping all of this in. So that's my client ID and my client secret. We'll need both of those. And we'll say OK. And let's just go see where we are in our settings, or our document here. So we've got our client ID and client secret. We did all this stuff here, and all that's done and now created. You now have an OAuth client ID and OAuth client secret needed by Home Assistant. And we will close this out or collapse it so we can get to the next section. Now you need to create a device access project in the device access console. This is the place where you pay the $5 fee, or if you've already paid the $5 fee, you just add a new project. You can go ahead and use existing stuff. I like to start from scratch. If you're having all kinds of problems with your Nest integration, I highly recommend you just delete it and recreate the integration with these steps. Get rid of all the other projects, get rid of all of the SDM projects you have, and just start over if you're having issues. All right. So we have this configured. We're going to go to the device access console. And in the device access console, we've done all this stuff. I've done the payment part. So we're going to go right through to that. And we're going to go to this part that says, let's start with the name of your project. So on here, I've got already a project, but I'm going to create a new project. We'll give it a name and we'll just be consistent. HA, next. And this is where you're going to add the information that you took from the other console. You need your OAuth client ID. And remember, the OAuth client ID is this right here. And if you're on this page and you forgot to copy it down, that's not a problem. Click on the edit right here. And on the right-hand side is your client ID and your client secret. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy it from here just to show you that you can do that. We're going to go into our device access console and paste in our OAuth client ID. And next. And you're going to want to enable events, because events are asynchronous and managed by Google's PubSub, which you enabled. Remember, you enabled the Cloud PubSub API. This is what you're going to use that for. So we're going to enable that. And now we're going to create the project. And once the project is created, you'll see it say down here, it's successfully created. And now you have this project with a project ID. You've got the OAuth client ID. And that's all really you're going to need for the next few steps. So let's go check our document here. We went and did all of this stuff here. So that's fine. And now let's collapse this because we're done with that section. The final section here is linking to your Google account. Now you're going to take all of this information and set it up in Home Assistant. Now, at this point, let's just talk about it for a second. All of what we just did was create the project in your Google Cloud Console, and then we linked your support or the Smart Device API to the project. All of the Google stuff, and then for some of you, the hard work is now done. The rest of it is just setting up Home Assistant to use this information that you already have. You should have a project ID. Let's be very clear about this because this causes some problems. This is a project ID for your device access console. Okay, this is not your project ID over here. This is a client ID. So you have your project ID here. Make sure you don't get those confused, and I'll show you where those go in a minute. So you need your project ID and you need your client ID to finish setting this up. So let's go over now into Home Assistant. Let's look at the settings here, or the document. You remember now we're sitting over here in Home Assistant with this screen up and running. Once you've done this, we've gone to the Cloud Console, created a project. We gave the project the name. We saved the project ID, and we'll need that later too. We added and enabled the Smart Device Management API. We enabled the Cloud PubSub API. And now we did all the other steps too. The thing about it is this doesn't cover every single step you need to do in order to make this work. So make sure you follow along and do the other steps before you submit. Now that we say we've done everything, we're going to go ahead and push that button. Setting up Nest requires configuring application credentials. You want to do that now. And we're going to say, okay. It's going to pop something up here on the screen. Give it a second. And it's going to add the application credentials. And these are the application credentials that are now stored in Home Assistant for easy reference. You can give it whatever name you want. I'm going to call it Nest Demo Creds. The Oauth client ID is the client ID you pulled from this right here. So you want to use this again. All right, so the Oauth client ID goes here. And then your Oauth client secret, you also need that. These are the credentials that are going to allow Home Assistant to talk to your system or your Google account. So you can get that from your notepad where you pasted it, or come back over here and pull in the information right here. We'll copy and we will paste that right here in the client secret. And then we'll click on create. Now it's done the creation part. What it needs now is the Cloud Project ID. And it gives you an example. The Cloud Project ID is this project ID here, not the project ID here. This is where it gets confusing. This is not the project ID it's asking for. It's asking for your project ID over here. So make sure you select the proper project ID. There's also a number at the end, so make sure you get the number. If you don't know what that is, come down here, and this is your ID for it right here. So HA Nest or Nest HA Demo. All right, that's what you want right there. And you're going to paste that into the Google Cloud Project ID, submit that. And now finally, you want the Device Access Project ID. The Device Access Project ID is under the Device Access Console, and it's what got created when you did these steps over here. So copy that, and you're going to paste that in here. I got tripped up 3 or 4 times in the fact that I added the wrong project IDs. Make sure you add the right ones. If you mess it up, go into the Nest integration on this page and delete it and start over. All right, let's say we have all this now. And by the way, you can see where it talks about this here. I skipped ahead on some of these steps. This actually tells you how to go through and do it here. I just followed along with the wiki, did all the Google stuff first, and then came in and added these things. You can go step by step here and do all of these things after the fact. But I wanted to get all the Google stuff done first, get all my values to paste, and just paste everything in and go. So we're going to submit now. It's going to ask you to authenticate your Google account. So make sure you choose the appropriate Google account that applies to your Nest account and your cloud account. All that's got to be the same thing. Once you submit, you'll end up on a page like this where it will ask you to allow permission for all of your things that you want exposed to Home Assistant, including your home and then your devices like my thermostats. Click on Next, and it's going to ask you an account to tie to it. So we'll choose my account, and it's going to pop up this Google hasn't verified this app. That's fine. Click on Advanced right here. Go to homeassistant.io. That's the domain that you set as a redirect domain, and that will take you to your Home Assistant instance. And it's going to ask you to authenticate your account to Home Assistant. And obviously, you make sure you trust it and all that. So we'll click on Continue. Now, finally, we're going to link our account to Home Assistant. And when it's all done, all of your entities should just pop right up here. And then you can assign them to areas. Finish. And now you will see your Nest integration show up here with the number of devices you have. And I can click on one here. And now I have this device, which I can then add to the dashboard and choose a card. And there's my thermostat. And we're done adding it to the dashboard. And if we want to go look at the dashboard, we come over here, and now we have that card on our dashboard, which we can control right here. So that's a lot of steps. Let me just make sure we went through everything on the document here. We did all of the stuff here. We linked our Google account, did all the things it says here. And that's basically it. Yep. All right. So that is how you do the Nest integration the easy way. You're going to create your cloud project. You're going to create your SDM or your Smart Device API project, and you're going to tie them all together into Home Assistant. Once you do this, hopefully we won't have to make a change again, as long as Google doesn't change the way their authentication mechanism works or they don't block out the API. Let me know what questions you have down below in the comments. If you're not a subscriber, please hit that subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. Join the channel and support what I do if you want to do that. Also available on Discord. There is a Nest section or Nest channel on my Discord server if you want to ask questions there. There is also, let me show you this last thing. If you run into issues with any of this stuff, there is a troubleshooting section on this page. Make sure that you are paying attention to all of the troubleshooting here if you run into an issue. Before you go asking a bunch of questions, this might actually fix the answer or have the answer for you. So make sure you're looking through all of this here. All right, with that, I really do appreciate you watching. I appreciate those that have already joined my channel, and we will see you on the next video.